Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be breaking down week 9 of the college football slate on Saturday, October 30th. Excited to get into it. Did miss last week. Didn't expect to, but I think I've mentioned on these videos, very, very busy this year, so it might happen on occasion. But glad to get back into it. Hope you guys did all right last week. Kind of need a name for the show. We're unnamed right now. It's just a one-man show here. Self-produced everything, so it does take a lot of hours. So sometimes I miss, but we're needing a name. Last year we had one, but obviously that fell through. So, but yeah, let's get into it. Kind of a weird slate. We have 3 games in the 60s, 1 game in the 70s as far as the total goes. There's a whole bunch in the 40s, and there's one in the 30s, believe it or not. So there's a lot of cross-off games. I would say just don't overthink it too much. If a game seems like a cross-off, cross it off. Maybe one player if you have to. That being said, a lot of people are going to, it's pretty obvious what the cross-off games are, so a lot of people are going to go that route. So if you have a spot you think you like in those seemingly cross-off games, you'll probably get some leverage that way, is what I'll say. Yeah, just not a great main slate. I mean, there's a ton of Big Ten games, as there always are in the main slate. Not a huge fan of Big Ten football, especially fantasy-wise. But, the degenerates are still there. Big Ten fans are still there. So here we are. Show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code Yonke. That's all caps, YONKE. Just been absolutely murdering it on Prize Picks this year. Tailor-made for what we do here. Fantasy and props for college football. Very soft market right now, is what I'll say. So you get $100 free if you sign up. You can use the link in the description, or you can use that promo code Yonke. That's YONKE, all caps. You get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So free money to play with if you're a first-time depositor. All right, let's get right into it. Miami versus Pitt. Miami kind of been a resurgent team here lately. I'm not really sure how much I buy into it. Derek King's out for the season, so Van Dyke's going to be our quarterback. He did have a pretty good showing last week against an NC State defense that I think is pretty good. He dropped 32 fantasy points in that one. He's a possibility in the mid-range. I'll say this Pitt defense, I thought they looked awful earlier in the year. I didn't think they could tackle at all. That Western Michigan game was super alarming. But they've looked a lot better, and we know they always have a good D-line, right? That's the one thing you know year in and year out with Pitt. They haven't played great teams, so I'm not sure if there really is defensive improvement, but I think I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. The advanced statistics love this defense. They'll tell you they have like the 8th ranked passing defense, some of the stats you look at, and I'm not so sure about that. I just think they are still vulnerable through the air. But that's just a long way of saying not a fantastic matchup, but maybe not as bad as it looks on paper initially with this one. Their only 2 tests, they got burned by Western Michigan, and who else burned them? Let me check real quick. Because Western Michigan burned them bad. Oh, yeah. Georgia Tech burned them through the air. And then Tennessee put up 34 points on them with Joe Milton at quarterback. Joe Milton, yeah, folks, can't complete 50% of his passes, still burned him. So I will say it's not as alpha as it looks on paper. As far as stacking options, I mean, really the wide receiving, what it's looking like right now, it's Charleston Rambo, first and foremost. He had 25 targets in his last 3 games, by far the leader. Other than that, I will say Keyshawn Smith he has been on the field more and he's been producing more, so I don't think that's a coincidence. At 3.7, I think he's one of your better pay down options on this slate. But like I said, it is kind of a volatile matchup. Jalen Knighton's their running back. He's looked a lot better than Cameron Harris. I'm glad they finally got somebody else in the backfield there. Not to poo-poo on Cameron Harris too much. One thing I do like about Knighton is he seems like most game scripts benefit him because he's a receiver and he's a rusher. I don't think they're a great rushing team, and against Pitt, I won't expect much on the ground. I think the best game script for him is probably going to be if they're playing from behind. He's had some nice games lately with that. But at 7.9K, not a great matchup. Definitely more of a secondary play, if anything. All right, Pitt. I think Pitt's probably going to be pretty heavily owned here. Miami can't tackle. They can't really cover. They can't really stop the run. Nothing really positive to say about Miami's defense or Manny Diaz in general. The thing about Pitt is that both their two best skill guys are both in concussion protocol. Um, Abanikanda, tough name to say. Their running back, he's actually pretty talented. They're not very good at running the football, but like I said, Miami can't stop the run, so I actually would have mild appeal because he's priced all the way down at 5.2K, and he is a receiver as well, a receiving threat out of the backfield. Going to be really hard for me to play Jordan Addison. He was described earlier in the week as very questionable by their coach, Pat Narduzzi, and he's still dealing with a concussion. I'm not sure how I feel about that at 7.2. I'll say right off the hop, this slate is absolutely loaded at running back. Probably because we have a Big Ten slate. Absolutely loaded at running back, like insanely loaded. A lot of expensive ones too. There's 4 running backs over 9K, and the wide receivers, not a ton sticking out at me for wide receiver. So if you have a wide receiver you really like, that might be where you get an advantage on this slate. So anyway, Addison's one of those pay-up options. It's really hard for me to trust him with that concussion being the case. Kenny Pickett, Heisman hopeful. Kenny Pickett. Can you imagine the year of our Lord 2021 and Kenny Pickett is a Heisman hopeful? Yeah, 8.8K. He's been killing it all year. Miami can't cover, can't tackle. 8.8K. I think he's going to be pretty popular. But I could see why. That has an over-under of 61, by the way, and it's Pitt is -9 if you're looking at that. So Miami expected to be playing from behind, but good luck predicting a Miami game. All right, Texas versus Baylor. We have another one set at 61.5 over-under, and it's expected to be close throughout. Texas is +2.5. This could be a good fantasy game anytime you see closely lined like that with a high-ish total. Texas has been really, really good in the first half of games, and then they've kind of dropped off. So if that continues here, you could have a decent game stack option. If Texas racks up those fantasy points in the first half and then Baylor comes back in the second half. But obviously that's just one game script. But given what we've seen from these two teams, seems likely to me. Other than that, Baylor, I can't predict Baylor. I'll tell you that right now. They've just proved me wrong all year. I'm not really a big believer in Texas, and I have had success fading them. I think I faded them 3 times this year in the betting market, and I think I won every single time. That being said, I just think they're pretty good and they're pretty talented. You pick and choose your spots. I think they're the most talented team in this matchup, but talent's not everything, right? Baylor, they just look well put together under Dave Aranda, though, and anytime Texas plays a team that's well put together, they just seem to eventually crumble and fall apart. All that being said, we're studying fantasy-wise. The Texas guys are really cheap, except Bijan, of course. Baylor's defensive numbers look good, but when you examine it a little more, let's look at Bijan first. They gave up over 200 rushing yards the 2 times they've been tested this year, so not a very tough schedule. And the 2 times they were tested, Oklahoma State and Iowa State both ran for over 200 yards and had multiple scores running the ball. So I don't know. On the year, they had 3.7 yards per carry, but I don't think they're stopping Bijan. Bijan's 9.7K. Like I said, there's a ton of good running backs. I'm never going to tell you to pass on Bijan Robinson, but at that price, you certainly have other options if you want to. All right, Baylor's pass defense. Also, going through the games, I'm still not super impressed. So I'll probably play the over in this one because Texas is going to score no matter what. And Baylor's probably going to score on Texas because Texas has no defense whatsoever. But yeah, so they gave up 342 passing yards to BYU, 270 to West Virginia, 260 to Iowa State. They just never really shut a team down, so it doesn't mean they're bad. But I think Casey Thompson's a fine play at 6.9K. Definitely a tournament option only, not in cash. He's had 2 huge games, and he has had 3 duds. So apparently you're getting nothing in between. Game script could be all over the place. It's tough to tell, but most likely going to be high scoring. So I think Casey Thompson's fine. As far as stacking options, it's pretty much turned into the Xavier Worthy show. Jordan Whittington, I think he's out for the year. I think he has a broken clavicle. But yeah, he's been out. He's going to be out for this one. So Xavier Worthy's the guy, the freshman, and he basically is the same story as Casey Thompson. He either does nothing or he blows up, except he's had 3 blow-up games. Good luck predicting what's going to happen. I still think he's too cheap. I think he's pretty close to an elite option at 6.8K. I definitely don't hate that in tournaments. Behind him, I don't see how you can play Joshua Moore unless you're one of those leverage freaks because he's done nothing for the majority of his last 2 years after a hot start to last year, so a year and a half, I guess. Other than that, Washington at 3.3K is too cheap. He's going to be starting with Whittington out. Only had 2 catches last week, but he had some decent yardage with that. So I think he's definitely volatile, but not one of your worst punts at 3.3K. Certainly not one of your worst. Usually their target share has been pretty concentrated, so I think Worthy's going to see a lot of targets to end the year. But like somebody's going to step up because Whittington was seeing a lot of targets. So my money would, I guess, be on Moore, but Washington's going to be on the field a lot. All right, this Baylor offense. So I'm a little bit conflicted here because Texas's defense, first and foremost, they're a total fade, 100% total fade. They're awful. That being said, I haven't really played Baylor in DFS all year, and they've killed me. They've really made me pay. Made me look pretty bad. They've had some big spots. So it's like, what do? Do I keep fading Texas? Or, but that means I hop on the Baylor bandwagon that I haven't been on all year. Am I jumping on too late? I'm a little conflicted, but overall, I think Texas' defense, they haven't shown anything at all. So we have to look at Baylor. Jerry Bohannon, their quarterback, he's fine at 7.2K. He's certainly in the player pool as a mid-range price. He does run a little bit. I will say his numbers were juiced. One reason I was fading him, like he doesn't run the ball very much. He'll get like 6 attempts, but he managed to get a rushing touchdown in every single game until last week, which I thought was a little bit fluky. There's a lot of things about this Baylor team that seem a little fluky to me. Not to trash on them. They've been doing a great job, but yeah. So he's okay. I don't feel strongly about him either way. Other than that, Tyquan Thornton has 25 targets in his last 3 games. He's really stepped up and become an alpha wide receiver. Playing a bad defense, he's only 6K. That's not bad, folks. Drew Estrada, I know last time I warned against playing Drew Estrada because he is getting targets, but he wasn't on the field very much. It just seemed kind of fluky, and I think he put up 0.5 points his last game. That being said, now he's all the way down at 4K. That's a pretty cheap price. Weak Texas defense. I don't hate it. Their tight end, Ben Sims. This offense likes to target the tight ends. They got BYU's former offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, and he likes his tight end. So 3.7, that's not too bad. Anyone behind that hasn't really seen any work. Snead, I'm not super interested in Snead, but okay, Abram Smith at 7.2. Yeah, I've been full fade Abram Smith all year long, and it's come back to bite me. But like, look at this usage. He's getting no usage, like 10 rushes, 11 rushes. Doesn't really catch the ball at all. But he's been putting up pretty good numbers. He put up big numbers against Texas State, Texas Southern, and Kansas to start the year, so it just seems, again, like a total fluke. Those are really bad defenses. And then was not very good against Iowa State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. So once they got to their Big 12 schedule, he really tailored off. And then the BYU game out of nowhere last week. It's like, who the hell saw that coming? Like, tell me with a straight face. I don't see how you could have. He had 27 carries, 188 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like I said, good luck predicting Baylor. This seems like a very good spot for him. This Texas defense is atrocious. PFF loves Abram Smith. I think it's like the best running back in the country. I don't know. Again, tough call, but Abram Smith's definitely going to be in the player pool this week. All right, Cincinnati versus Tulane. Yeah, Cincinnati's definitely changed this year from a DFS perspective. Desmond Ridder has not done much. But I think this is a week you could hop back on him. I feel like I've said that a few times and it hasn't worked out. But the over-under 62.5, so Cincinnati has a huge implied team total. And Tulane's defense is atrocious. Like, seriously, one of the worst-ranked teams defensively in the entire country. Usually a consistent team. I mean, they're 7-6 pretty much every single year. But now all of a sudden we got a Jeff Fisher sighting in Louisiana because that's what they were. They were Jeff Fisher in Louisiana. And then I don't know where he went, apparently. Apparently he's going to SoCal to get the USC job. But it's been really bad for Tulane. They've really fallen off a cliff. I'm not sure what's happening there. So, pretty good pace here. Cincinnati's playing at a much higher pace than they used to be. 2.76 plays per minute in conference play. And Tulane always plays with a pretty good pace. They're at 2.91 in conference play. So, pretty good numbers. Basically, they're playing a defense that's ranked the 3rd worst in the entire country, giving up 42 points per game. They're bad everywhere, especially in the passing game. And Cincinnati's trying to drop 40, 50 points on everyone because they're trying to make the playoffs, and they definitely do have a shot, regardless of what anyone's telling you. They certainly have a shot, seeing how the rest of the season plays out. So, Ridder at 8.3, dual threat, fantastic matchup. Don't hate it. I don't play Cincinnati wide receivers, but that's subject to change because Alec Pierce is having a pretty good year and he's seen a lot of targets. He's clearly the team's alpha and has a fantastic matchup. At 6.6K for a Cincinnati wide receiver, it pains me deep inside to play that. But yeah, if I'm playing 150s in the player pool, if I'm making a single entry, probably not. Other than that, Josh Wiley, their tight end, man, I played this guy week after week after week. He was priced like a stone cold min at one point. He's just too talented, good tight end recruit. He was good last year. I kept saying he's going to have a breakout week. And I finally jumped off last week, and guess what happens? He finally has his breakout week out of nowhere. They were awful against Navy. The only player who had a good game was Wiley, and I did not have Wiley. So at 3.7K, again, good matchup, maybe. Other than that, I can't really recommend everyone. Now, Leonard Taylor, the other tight end, who's been more involved throughout most of the year, is now down at 3.2K. I think that's too cheap, but not a smash play. Maybe a punt. Jerome Ford's all the way up at 9.2K. It's a fantastic matchup. Huge favorites, huge implied team total. But that's a really expensive price, so he's fine. All right, Tulane, I'm pretty much going to skip over. Basically, they completely split everything at wide receiver. And they have a tough matchup. They split the reps at running back, tough matchup. And then Michael Pratt, their quarterback's in concussion protocol. I actually might, if I'm playing 150, if Pratt is cleared to play, and I know that, I might have a share or two because I kind of like Pratt. I feel like he's always a little under-owned in those smaller slates. I had him last week against SMU. I think his ownership was decent, but it was still like way lower than it should have been. He's a dual threat, and the team sucks, and their defense sucks. They're going to be playing from behind, almost always in positive game scripts, but very tough matchup at 5.9, and he might not even play. All right, Indiana versus Maryland. Kind of a sicko game here. Over-unders at 49.5. I really want to bet Indiana in this spot. Like, really, really want to. Plus 5.5. But I can't do that because their quarterbacks are all dead. Just in time for Halloween weekend, they have all decided to, as a group effort, dress up as skeletons. And that's what they're rocking. Don't love it for DFS, folks. Don't love the skeleton costumes. Michael Penix might play. Jack Tuttle might play. Both might not play. If either one of those guys play, I don't know if they can make your player pool because who knows if they're going to last all game and they're not healthy and they've been flat out awful. But for a betting standpoint, I'll be on them if one of those guys does play. I don't really know if it matters because they've both been pretty bad. Yeah, Maryland's defense is bad, like really bad. I think underratedly so because I feel like the ownership's always lower, fading them than it should be. They're not good at all, like really awful everywhere defensively, and Maryland does play at a decent tempo. I think that means Stephen Carr is probably going to be in the player pool at 5.5K running back. He gets decent usage. I wish they would use him more in the receiving game, especially when they have no quarterbacks, no healthy quarterbacks. But they haven't been. Like, he had 8 receptions against Michigan State, and he's a good receiver, and they just haven't used him otherwise. So I'm not really sure it's a very inventive offense. Oh, by the way, these backup quarterbacks, so they played like 5 of them last week, Grimmel and McCauley. Obviously not going to be in the player pool for me. McCauley does run a little bit against a terrible Maryland team, like if he starts, but like just awful numbers last week. One of them's a walk-on, if not both of them. But anyway, yeah, they cost me a couple thousand in prize picks because I had Ty Freifogel lined up as my last play against a bad Ohio State defense. I only needed him to get 12 points, and it was a torrential downpour, and they were starting a walk-on quarterback, or they were playing a walk-on quarterback, like the 4th quarterback they played in the game, and they just decided they weren't going to throw the ball. They were just going to run him up the gut 11 times for 9 yards in the second half. So very frustrated with Indiana. But anyway, yeah, I can't play their wide receivers. Hendershot's the top one at 4.8K. Their tight end, I would play him over Freifogel probably at this point, depending who starts. If Penix or Tuttle starts, I think Freifogel's actually a pretty good play. I could get back to that. I'm not going to totally rely it, but a very good matchup. All right, Maryland. Yeah, not a big fan of Maryland, honestly. But they're really cheap this week. Indiana's been in really bad spots all year long, and their defensive numbers, while not great, they're not too bad in my opinion. When you put some context into them, the teams they've been playing, and they're allowing 362 yards per game, which that's not too bad. All right. So Tua's brother, Talia, he's a cheap dual threat at 6.5K, so I don't hate it. Speaking of cheap, here's a little cheap shot. Some people on Twitter like to say he's going to be a first-round pick because he beat up on some absolute cupcakes to start the year. And yeah, we've never been a fan of Talia. Like, he runs The offense plays fast, so if he has a good matchup, you could play him here as home favorites at 6.5K. That's really cheap, but yeah, just been awful when he faces tough competition, and all he does is pretty much throw screen passes, and now one of his best wide receivers is out for the year. Secondary play, if anything. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh. He's a dual threat at 6.5K. You can do worse. All right, Raheem Jarrett's their top receiver at 5.4K, but not super interesting for me. Other than that, Okonkwo's their tight end. He gets a decent amount of usage, and he's all the way down at 3.5, but this Indiana secondary actually isn't bad. Running back room, they split the carries, and Indiana's not too bad defending the run, and Maryland hasn't, as a team, they haven't ran for 100 yards in 3 straight games, so obviously nothing there for me. All right, Michigan versus Michigan State. This is a Big Ten game I can get a little interested in, but not for DFS. Michigan's playing, so over-under's at 50. Seems a tad high. Michigan's -4. I think Michigan's the better team. I'm pretty convinced Michigan's the better team. I'm not convinced that matters at all because it's Jim Harbaugh playing in a big game, which, if you've been following him at all, you know what that means. Michigan State's at home, rivalry game. They've been pretty good in this matchup, and yeah, I think College Game Day is going to be there. So I'm not really sure it matters if Michigan State's a better team. To be frank, we don't play Michigan State quarterback or Michigan quarterbacks. We don't play Michigan wide receivers, and I don't think we're going to play any Michigan running backs because Michigan State's rushing defense is actually pretty good, and Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins do split carries. So if you're paying all the way up at running back, I find it hard to believe you're paying up for Corum, who hasn't had 20 carries in any game other than one this year against Rutgers. That being said, this kid's fantastic. He's a very good talent. If you're playing 150, maybe a share or two. All right, Michigan State. Yeah, Michigan's defense is good. That being said, running back wise, they have given up nearly 200 rushing yards. They give up nearly 200 rushing yards to Rutgers, which is concerning. Give up 162 to Northern Illinois. I don't think it's like a totally shut down defense. And Michigan State's offense, while they have been very fluky, very, very, very fluky, especially in the passing game, they hit a lot of big plays, explosive plays. And I mean, it's not a total fluke. Like Peyton Thorne's played okay, but they haven't faced a single team all year long with a winning record. And they've been totally reliant on the big play in the passing game. Like, yeah, if you're playing terrible teams, you're going to hit big plays. What happens if you hit no big plays against Michigan because they have a good defense? What if you hit 2 big plays and that's it? So I think the wide receivers, I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time. I think it's a fade for me. Reed and Naylor are the clear-cut top 2 guys. If you want to play one, sure. I think Naylor's had the more big plays this year. You'd be really, really, really hoping he breaks a long touchdown if you play him there. Okay, Kenneth Walker, all that being said, so like I said, the rush defense, not fantastic. Kenneth Walker, 6.7K. I think that's too cheap. He's the Athletic thinks he's like the Heisman front runner for some reason. But he gets a ton of usage. So basically all we know about Michigan State, while most things seem fluky to me, we are pretty confident Kenneth Walker's going to get 20 carries. And if Rutgers can almost put up 200 yards, maybe Kenneth Walker can by himself. So I don't hate Kenneth Walker at all this week. No Peyton Thorne for me. Okay, Iowa versus Wisconsin. Do I even talk about this game? Over-under's at 37. 37. A college game with an over-under at 37. Just run and hide unless you're going for some weird like mega ultra degenerate leverage play, which I don't know about that one. Yeah, I don't know. Tyler Goodson's the best player on Iowa, but Wisconsin's rush defense has been like historically great. They are allowing only 53 rushing yards per game on 1.9 yards per carry. 1.9. So no thanks. Only guy I would possibly consider is Sam Laporta, Iowa's tight end at 3.7K. He's their go-to guy in the receiving game, and whatever that means. Graham Mertz, disgusting. Receiving options, pretty disgusting. I would just consider the tight ends, if anything, in the passing game. Ferguson's at 3.4 for Wisconsin. I'm a big fan of Braylon Allen for Wisconsin, but he doesn't get very many carries because he splits carries with Malusi. Malusi's cheaper. He should not be. That's pretty silly. But I can't really recommend playing anyone in a game with a total that low. All right. Iowa State, West Virginia. Not a super interesting one here. Oh yeah, one thing about Wisconsin, not really for DFS, but their quarterback Jim Leonard, like he's been doing some super interesting stuff. I've seen some stuff come across my feed that he's doing some really innovative, really cool stuff at Wisconsin. And I think that's worth looking into if you're a betting man to see what teams emulate that, because I think they're going to have a big edge. Not that they'll necessarily do it to Wisconsin's level, but like Wisconsin is just absolutely killing it defensively. And yeah, he's probably going to get an NFL job soon. So worth looking into if you have the time. I just don't. Okay, anyway, Iowa State -7. Over-under's at 48. West Virginia, tough team to read. Iowa State, I don't think is that tough to read. I think Iowa State's good. I think they've been good all year. I bet on them against Iowa and lost, and I feel like that was the best bet I've made all year. I would make that bet 100 times out of 100 if they played again right now at Iowa State in Ames. I mean, I feel like Iowa State would win pretty easily. I don't think Iowa's very good, and I think Iowa State's pretty clearly a good team. But anyway, not salty at all. I think they're going to win this game pretty handily. It's Iowa State, so what does handily mean? I mean, that could mean 14 points for them, or they totally blew out Kansas, so who knows. But West Virginia is better than Kansas pretty clearly. Breece Hall, 9.1K. He's one of those expensive running backs. I can't talk you off Breece Hall. They had a tough go of it last week against Oklahoma State, but he's been pretty matchup proof outside of that, and he still managed 18 points. I think that's probably a floor game is 18 points. I don't hate it. It's not a priority play at all. It's Breece Hall. Brock Purdy, actually, if you're playing 150, I think he should be in the player pool. And I know that sounds crazy, but you can throw on this West Virginia team, and this is the last time we're ever going to get Brocktober. In case you don't know, Brock Purdy does not lose, does not play poorly in October. The other months, maybe watch out, but like for your own sake, if you're an Iowa State fan, watch out. But he's been really good in October, and this is your last chance ever to play Brock Purdy in October. So, all right. Pass catching options for the Cyclones, not really interesting. Hutchinson's all the way up at 7.3. He's pretty clear cut there. Number one guy. I think he even should have had another touchdown last week, but he dropped the ball before he entered the goal line. Still managed 12 for 125 and 2, but I think that's a ceiling game. I don't know if we can expect that. They don't pass the ball all that much. Charlie Culler, their tight end at 4.1K. He's just week in and week out. He's underpriced. He's a nice lineup filler. He's not a priority, but he gets usage consistently. He gets red zone looks consistently, and he's too cheap. All right, West Virginia. We don't play their wide receivers. They spread the ball out too much. Tough matchup. We don't play Jarrett Dagey. Tough matchup. 5.4K. I will say he throws the ball a decent amount for a quarterback that low priced, but you go ahead and look through the game logs and tell me what's going on. What's piquing your interest? Is that 22 points over LIU? I don't know. Letty Brown. We played Letty Brown in some spots. He had a monster game for us on Prize Picks last week, but they're not going to run the ball well here. They've only ran for 100 yards twice this season. That was against Virginia Tech and I think LIU. And against TCU last week. So I don't even know if they got to 100 versus LIU. Oh, no, that's against FBS competition, sorry. So yeah, that's not encouraging. No, thank you. All right, Georgia versus Florida. By the way, if you guys ever feel, so sometimes I don't spend a lot of time just talking about their players who shouldn't be in your player pool, because what's the point? It's kind of a waste of time. These videos go long anyway. But if you feel like I skipped over anyone, any pump plays maybe, feel free to let me know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know on Twitter. Because sometimes I skip them over and I shouldn't. All right, Georgia versus Florida. Yeah. Again, Florida. Every time I try to predict a Florida game, it goes wrong. I don't know what to think about them. The advanced stats, absolutely love this team. It's weird. Like, I wanted to fade them going into the year. They have lost all their talent from a year ago, and they are transitioning from a pass-first offense to a run-first offense when they haven't been able to run the ball in years. I feel like I say this every time they're on a slate. And then it's worked out pretty well. Like, they're able to run the ball. The stats really love them. They ran the ball on Bama. They ran the ball better than Bama, defended the run better than Bama. I was very, very, very impressed. But they keep losing games. They lost to LSU. They lost to Kentucky in a game that the stats say they should have won pretty handily. I don't know what to say about Florida. The stats like them, and Georgia usually just dominates their competition. This is a rivalry game. Do they dominate them here? I don't really see how I could say anything else with conviction. All right, as far as quarterbacks, I mean, they just aren't really throwing the ball. Georgia, that is, Stetson Bennett, you're playing him at 6.7K, I would say seek help immediately. I can't help you. That's beyond me. So seek help from somebody else. JT Daniels at 6.5K. Apparently he's going to play, but it's like an ongoing thing with him. It's so dumb. Like, who knows if he's ever going to play. The quote's trying to follow it. I mean, I just really don't care at this point, to be honest. I don't really know if it matters either for this offense. It's going to matter eventually, and this is a rivalry game, so like maybe it does matter in this matchup, but I don't care until I'm watching the game. Handicapping perspective, DFS perspective, who really cares? I probably won't be playing either one. And you could say, well, didn't LSU put up what, like nearly 50 points against Florida? Shouldn't you have interest? Maybe, but he's a Georgia quarterback, and that hasn't been great in DFS. Okay, other than that, Brock Bowers, their tight end, is pretty clear-cut, their go-to guy. Their receivers are a total mess behind them. I say this every time Georgia's on the slate. I think Jermaine Burton is far and away the best wide receiver on this team, but he's been hurt, not used, etc., etc. All right, Zamir White at 6.K. Yeah, he's been getting more and more usage as the year's gone on. I guess he's always in a favorable game script because he plays for Georgia. The usage, like, that's what I say. Like, he usually does not get good usage. They really split the carries between, like, 4 or 5 guys in this backfield. But he's been getting more and more as the season goes on. I'm not really sure what his ceiling is. But he's been impressing me. I think he's kind of running away with that job more and more as the year's gone on, is what I'll say. But I still can't play him at 6.K. All right, Florida. Yeah, if you want to get really sicko with this one, you could play Anthony Richardson this week. Again, probably not. But if you're playing 150, I think you should have at least a share. Wow, yeah, what a recommendation. This guy scores a touchdown every 8 times he touches the ball. Every eight times he touches, yeah. Out of all the touches he's had, he hasn't had many this year. 1 in every 8. Just when he gets the ball, when he gets a snap, it ends up being a touchdown. So extremely explosive. That's been against bad teams, and he has the toughest matchup possible against Georgia. But weird things happen in rivalries, and apparently weird things happen in Florida games. Usually not in a good way. All right, don't play wide receivers against Georgia. I will say if you absolutely have to, at 3.3K, Whitmore has been hurt and is supposed to come back and has been rested after a bye week. Okay, running backs, don't play them against Georgia. That was easy. Easy game to talk about, not much to say. All right, Florida State, Clemson. Dude, some of the games they're giving us on the slate, like really, really. What the fuck is this game, guys? That's about all I have to say about that. Yeah, Clemson has really good defense, and Florida State, usually their games end up resulting in points, but Clemson's don't. Clemson hasn't. They haven't scored more than 19 points in regulation against any FBS team. Their defense is still really good. They've just fallen off a cliff that nobody saw coming. Good luck trying to find good analysis on that cliff because, again, nobody saw it coming, and now it's all kind of retrospective after the fact. So anyway, it's pretty interesting. But this is why college football is so volatile, because all of a sudden Clemson is no good. Yeah, Jordan Travis, the team's looked a lot better. They've won 3 straight. Florida State has when he's been under center. Should have been playing him the whole time over Mackenzie Milton after he was better all offseason long in practice. And then they just decided to go with Milton because he had that storybook ending against Notre Dame. But anyway, tough matchup. He does run, but not cheap enough for me to consider. Don't play any of their wide receivers is pretty much all I have to say. Let me see, unless someone's mispriced. Not really. Okay. Running back wise, they do have a really good run game. Corbin's averaging 7.9 yards per carry, and Trayshawn Ward, really impressed with Trayshawn Ward. I think he's a freshman, maybe he's a COVID freshman. Young guy, really, really impressive all year long. He's averaging, 7.2, 7.4 yards per carry. They're both averaging over 7. Very tough matchup against Clemson. I'm not really sure I could play either. I think the price is about right on both of them, to be honest with you. And Corbin almost never gets more than like 11 carries in a game. All right, Clemson. Yeah, this should be quick too. DJU's been terrible this year. That being said, Florida State secondary is really bad. Really bad. Florida State has a good defensive line, so I think the running backs for Clemson aren't great. Kobe Pace is out. If Will Shipley was really cheap, I might play him. Will Shipley always seems to be kind of popular. Guys love to hype him up, even if he's only getting 10 carries. I played him in the past too. But that was when he was a clear-cut starter. I guess here he's the clear-cut starter, and they're favored by 9, and they're playing at home. It's not my favorite, but you could have some shares of Shipley. Maffa at 4.1K is going to split a little bit of the usage with him and get some goal line looks as well. But yeah, DJU at 5.7K. Like, Florida State secondary is really bad. I'm not really sure I could play DJU. He was benched last week, but he did come back into the game, so I would bet he plays, but who knows with Clemson at this point. And yeah, who knows if he even starts. So tough to get there, but pretty good matchup. If you're ever going to play DJU, this might be the opportunity. The wide receivers, Justin Ross is the top guy, but that he's going to split a lot of that usage when Nada comes back. Pretty much everybody they have back here is a clone of each other. They're all big and tall and athletic, but they don't change directions very well. I think I heard someone say it, maybe it's the Cover 3 podcast. They said Will Shipley's the only quick player on this entire offense, and they've never said anything more accurate in their lives. They're all big, hulking, tall, can jump. They're not quick. They can't move laterally. That's a problem when you're playing football. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that. EJ Williams is expected back for this one as well. Him and Nada missed last week. I think it was just COVID protocol, so they should be fine. Their tight end, Braden Galloway, is going to be out, so that would mean more work for Davis Allen at 3.4K, but not super enticing at all. All right, Colorado versus Oregon. Oh, yeah, out of the sicko mode. Now we're talking about Colorado's offense. Just kidding. Yeah, Colorado's offense. It's the worst offense in the country. So I don't think I'm going to talk about any other players because worst offense in the country. Broussard at 4.K. If you really, really just need to play some Colorado players in your 150, I guess Broussard. I will say Chenault, Laviska or Levante. I get it wrong every time. I think it's Laviska, right? Levante's on the Jaguars. I think he's the best player on this team, offensively at least. I feel pretty confident about that. Well, not super confident, but he's always suspended, always getting in legal trouble, always whatever he's doing, breaking team rules, just breaking rules in general. He's really good at breaking rules. Is he really good at football? I don't know, but he's pretty talented. So who knows if he even gets playing time. So I probably shouldn't have even mentioned him, but if you really need a punt, you really want to get crazy, you really want leverage, I don't know. Okay, so I will say, Oregon's always involved in weird games. They're always weird games. As an Oregon fan, I watch all their games almost every second. Every minute of every single game. They're just weird. Like, some teams are just weird. They're hard to predict. They're very good as an underdog. Pretty much when they're an underdog, you should pretty much auto-bet them. I thought they were going to lose last week against UCLA, and look what happened. Just when you count them out, they win. When you think they're going to cover as big favorites, they almost never do. They don't play very well in that role. Mario Cristobal's never really been one to run up the score. That being said, is Colorado even going to score at all? They haven't. They haven't scored more than, 13, 14 points against any other team other than Arizona, who's not really a team. They're just kind of out there doing stuff. Not really playing football. I don't know what they're out there doing, just giving up points, helping us DFS players. Anyway, I get sidetracked. This should be a very advantageous spot for their offense because they should be playing with a huge lead. Anthony Brown at 8.1K, there's no way you could play him. He's been PFF's lowest graded quarterback in the Pac-12 all season long, pretty much. Had a pretty good game against UCLA last week, and then he just threw 2 absolutely terrible interceptions that almost cost him the game. And that was against the easiest matchup you're going to get all year long in a UCLA secondary. Colorado's defense isn't bad. The numbers don't love them, but they've been on the field pretty much the entire season long and have held up decently, all things being considered. They gave up a ton of rushing yards to USC, which was really weird. Their metrics are just kind of okay on both sides of the ball. They're not really, I don't really think they have a weakness. They're just okay everywhere. But they're going to be in some tough spots against Oregon. If they hold up here, props to them. I can't really play their wide receivers. I do think Devin Williams at 4.8K. I do think he's probably their most well-rounded wide receiver. Oregon fans could have told you that off season. Now some people on Twitter have seen he has 2 big games, and now all of a sudden they're hopping on the Williams bandwagon. Anyway. Bothersome, but anyway, they don't use their wide receivers. There was that game day sign UCLA, which I thought was pretty funny. So what it said, now I'm gonna butcher it. Oregon wide receivers are more useless than. Oh no, I totally forgot. Anyway, there was a funny game day sign, which was funny because they don't use their wide receivers, but it was kind of ironic too because Oregon clearly has more talented wide receivers than UCLA, who also doesn't use their receivers at all in that offense. So I thought it was kind of a weird sign, but also funny. More ironic on multiple levels. Okay, so Travis Dye's 8.7K. That's too expensive. I really like Travis Dye. He's clearly the focal point of this offense since CJ Verdell's gone out for the year, and he gets receiving work as well. Has a fumbling problem, but hasn't popped up too much lately. This could be a very advantageous game script. He could score 4 more touchdowns, but the yardage just isn't there. There was a 1 point against UCLA where he had 17 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just ridiculous. But yeah, you can see, look at that reception, 4, 7, and 4 over his last 3 games, reception-wise. The touchdowns have been there. It's just kind of sicko playing him at 8.7 when you have so many good running backs on the slate. So maybe a secondary play, if anything. I think it's probably more of a leverage play. I'm not super interested. If he was like even like 7.4K, maybe, but 8.7 is kind of ridiculous. All right, Texas Tech, Oklahoma. Texas Tech is not good. Texas Tech fired their coach, Matt Wells, seemingly out of nowhere. Apparently, a lot of the people in that program were surprised. A lot of times you'll see teams kind of rally around the new coach in that situation for 1 week before falling off a cliff. I don't know. Oklahoma, just very, very tough team to predict. Their games just don't really make any sense. The over-under's at 67, and they're a 20-point favorite, so I think they have the highest implied total on the slate. Yeah, I don't know. Oklahoma's defense, here's the deal. So I've been trying to figure him out because all season long I've been thinking they have a pretty good defense, and I don't know. It's just okay. The defensive line is very good. They get a lot of havoc. They create a lot of pressure, and they're not very good anywhere else. They're just not very good in coverage, but they have had a lot of cornerbacks dinged up. I'm not really sure how many of them are coming back for this game, so maybe monitor that. But anyway, Columbia at 5.4K with a total that high when he's supposed to be playing from behind all game long. That's too cheap for the Big 12 environment where you're playing from behind and throwing at 5.4K. The tough part is when you look at his game log, it's just pretty dreadful. He hasn't been good at all. He was good against Texas, and he's been terrible ever since, throwing a lot of picks too. He can run a little bit. He'll probably get sacked a lot, and so he'll probably end up with negative rushing yards sack-wise unless he breaks off a couple of big runs. I can see why Matt Wells got fired because they were playing a bad Kansas State team. Or Kansas State's weakness? No, Kansas State's not bad. They're playing a bad Kansas State pass defense, secondary, and they had 17 pass attempts last week. So Geiger and Ezukanma, they're 2 top wide receivers. They're both pretty good. They combined for 3 catches for 3 yards. 3 catches for 3 yards amongst them against not a great pass defense. But somehow they had 3 rushes for 75 yards and a touchdown. Just one of the weirdest things you'll ever see. I think Geiger at 4.8K is not terrible. Ezukanma, I can't get there. I think they should be about even in price. Looking at their usage, anyone behind that, I won't play, personally. They are going to be playing from behind. I would assume they're going to be throwing a lot. Maybe they pulled some stunt they pulled last week. But so Kuntz, the tight end at 3.6, he could maybe like catch a touchdown or 2. I don't play Sir Roderick Thompson. And when Taj Brooks is back, which he is, I think Taj Brooks is the better back. SaRodorick Thompson had like 1 big week and then did nothing. That's kind of the deal on SaRodorick Thompson. Like he just blows up once or twice a year, and everyone starts hyping him up, and then he does nothing. Like we'll get you 2 points. So who knows? Maybe he has a blow up game when you least expect it, but I won't be betting on it. All right, Oklahoma. You probably know what it is with Oklahoma by now. What is there to say? Caleb Williams is the highest priced player on the entire slate at 10,000. It's probably warranted. Bad Texas Tech team. I will say, Texas Tech's defense, their stats are pretty weird. So they gave up over 330 rushing yards to Texas and TCU. So that happened twice. Other than that, they've held teams to under 100 rushing yards in every single game, other than Kansas, 145. So it's like either they do amazing or they give up 330 yards. I would guess this is a game where they give up 330 yards. I don't know. I saw they were, like Parker Fleming, CFB graphs, he puts out those advanced stats. He had them ranked 8th in EPA per play against the rush, 8th in the entire country. I don't know. Do you think they're the 8th best rushing defense? I don't know. They did better against Kansas State last week than I expected. Anyway, their passing defense isn't good. And Caleb Williams can't run. He's a dual threat, huge implied team total. I'm not sure I could pay up at 10K because there's a lot of good options on the slate. There's a pretty good mid-range for quarterbacks. The upper mid-range, or the upper, not all the way up at 10K, but the higher range with like Ritter and Pickett isn't bad either. So I'm not sure I could get there at 10K, but obviously in tournaments, I mean, he could get you 45 points. It wouldn't be too surprising. Okay, as far as receiving options, I'm not really sure I can get there with any of these guys. None of them have really popped off this year. Hazelwood's been the clear beneficiary of Williams at quarterback, has 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games. He's been seeing targets and he's been on the field more than just about any other wide receiver on this team this season, and he just couldn't do anything with Rattler at quarterback. Well, he had a decent game against Nebraska, but it's just still, when you look at the usage, it's just still not fantastic. At 6.7K, good matchup. I mean, one of these guys could end up going for 3 touchdowns. Mims has had an awful year. He was great last year, which is where has it been. We know he's talented. We know he has a great matchup. He's burned me so much in DFS, I can't really recommend him. But again, if one of these guys had 3 touchdowns, I don't think anybody would be surprised. And I think it's more of a crapshoot than anything. Like, I know Hazelwood, the usage will clearly point to Hazelwood, but he has a higher price, and even his usage isn't like elite when you're looking for DFS things. Other than that, I'm not going to recommend everyone because they split the usage too much. Mike Woods was just really a pain in my side. I had him in some lineups last week. They said he was warming up. Or they said he wasn't going to play. They said he was doubtful. Then they said he was warming up. Then there was a picture on Twitter of him on the depth chart, and then I don't think he played. Mario Williams also didn't play. Apparently he's hopeful to play. So it's worth monitoring those 2 guys because if they don't play, Trevon West is going to be on the field more. And Farouk is going to get some slot snaps at 3K, but I guess you could punt Farouk if you really wanted to, but both Woods and Williams would have to be out. If both Woods and Williams plays, I don't really see either as a priority option. Maybe a little bit of Woods in your 150, maybe a share or 2 of Williams. But okay, TCU versus Kansas State. We love fading TCU. So the line's at 3.5. If I had a 3 right now, I would take Kansas State. Why? I don't know. I just kind of like this Kansas State team. I like betting on them. Weird things happen. They faced a tough level of competition. Now it's getting easier. They looked awful against Texas Tech to start that game, and then through the first 5 minutes, and then for the rest of the game, they were pretty clearly the better team. Only won by 1 because it's such a bad start. Anyway, so TCU. Let's check out TCU. They're giving up 7 yards per play. 7 yards per play. This is Gary Patterson. Gary Patterson's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach. I said before the year, TCU notably slipping defensively. Gary Patterson doesn't really seem all that interested. I said, if he looks that way again this year, I predicted before the year, I said I think he's going to get fired. It just seems, something seems off. Something seems really off at TCU. And now it just seems really off. Giving up 7 yards per play is not okay. But offensively, they're pretty good. They're averaging 6.9 yards per play. So obviously that makes for fantasy goodness. That being said, Kansas State's a weird team for DFS because they play at a slow pace. They like to slow it down. They kind of just muck up games. Kansas State wants to make it ugly. Okay, so anyway, Max Duggan at 7.5. He's impossible to predict, but he is a dual threat at 7.5K, and Kansas State's weakness is in the passing game. So I think Max Duggan has to be in your player pool. That's just, again, he could get you 12 points. It could be an ugly game. Or it could be a total shootout because TCU is going to give up 40. And maybe Max Duggan comes back on the side. Maybe they get 41. And he runs for 3 scores. It wouldn't surprise anybody, right? Wide receiver-wise, it's pretty much all on Quentin Johnston at 7K. This guy's really fantastic, really good deep threat. I think he's a turning play at 7K. It's usually I wouldn't recommend a TCU wide receiver because it's just gross from a stat standpoint when you look at their usage. But he's been really popping off. He is a very, very good player, and he should have the advantage pretty much all game long. J.D. Spielman retired, so Tay Barber's the only other wide receiver you would look at, but I don't think I've ever recommended playing Tay Barber, and this is not going to be the first time. All right, wide receiver-wise, Zach Evans is extremely talented at 7K. There's been a lot of weird stuff this week, so good luck predicting this one. Try to stay tuned. Check out those message boards. I'm just kidding. I never stoop to message boards unless I absolutely have to, but let somebody else do the work for you on your college football Discord, whatever you're in. Apparently he deleted the TCU stuff from his Instagram bio. Apparently the relationship status was updated to "It's Complicated" on Facebook. Does Facebook still exist? I don't know. I know it does, but anyway. So at 7K, that would normally be a good play because he's extremely talented. He's an explosive play waiting to happen. He's been a monster all year long, but is he even going to play? I don't know. They said he was practicing after he did that, so I think he's going to play. But would anybody be surprised if he's just mysteriously not there in warm-ups? I don't know. But yeah, if he does play at 7K, he should be in your player pool. Over-under's at 58.5 on this one, by the way. And it's lined competitively, so this is not a bad fantasy game. Kind of two tough teams to to predict, but not a bad fantasy game. All right, Skylar Thompson at 7.3K. So I played a ton of Skylar Thompson last week at 6K. A ton of Skylar Thompson. And like I said, the game was just really weird. It almost got out of hand for them to start. No fault of Skylar Thompson's. And once they finally got going, he was just shredding Texas Tech. He had 296 yards, completed 80% of his passes. My issue with Skylar Thompson, and I'll probably get back to him. He'll be in the player pool this week because, like I said, TCU's defense is not a defense. They're just, like I said, out there running around, whatever they're doing. Trying to get some Instagram photos so they can have it on their bio where they delete TCU. Again, I don't know what they're doing. But the thing with Skylar Thompson, he's a dual threat. He's very volatile because they don't throw the ball a lot, so you're usually relying on him to get you like a rushing touchdown for tournaments or two, which he's done in the past. But he's pretty hobbled. He's been hobbled all year long. He took a hit like from his own offensive lineman and like their first or second offensive drive, and I thought he was going to come out of the game. Like, it looks pretty bad. And I think he already had a brace on that leg, and he stayed in the game, but he did not look very mobile. So if Skylar Thompson loses his mobility, I don't know. But I don't know how mobile you have to be against this TCU defense, just like out there taking selfies mid-play or whatever they're doing. So, yeah, anyway, he'll be in the player pool. We don't play Kansas State wide receivers. It's just really volatile. Malik Knowles, I think, is their top guy. Phillip Brooks. I don't know if I could get there, but his usage has been pretty good. Ima Terebe is their tight end. The Immortal Baby at 3.3. He gets decent usage if you really need a pay down option. Deuce Vaughn is all the way up at 9.4. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get there with Deuce Vaughn. I don't know if I have a reason, just that's really expensive to play for a guy who almost never gets 20 carries, but he does get 20 touches because he gets a lot of receiving usage. This is a fantastic matchup against TCU. I guess maybe he'll be in my player pool a little bit, but more of a secondary play. Fantastic matchup, fantastic player. He's pretty clearly the alpha on the offense. It's just the price is really difficult. And there's a lot of good options. So nothing against Deuce Vaughn at all. This kid's been fantastic. Okay, Purdue against Nebraska. This is probably like the most random game on the slate. Purdue's plus 7.5, over-under 52.5. I think Nebraska is pretty good. I make fun of Nebraska a lot, but they're pretty good. They're good defensively. Pretty good in pass coverage, pretty good tackling, create some havoc, really good against the rush. Kind of like Nebraska, so I won't be playing much of Purdue, especially not King Daru. The thing to monitor here is Xander Horvath, their running back, who I was pretty high on going into the year because I thought his usage was going to be pretty good. And even though they can't run the ball, probably won't run the ball in this matchup, he's going to get usage, and he's a good wide receiver. He's a good receiver out of the backfield, which is great for PPR, especially if he's stone cold minimum and he starts. We don't have news, so monitor this one closely. If I know for sure Horvath's playing, he's probably the punt of the week at 3K. Not like a must play, but if I'm playing a guy at stone cold minimum, I'm probably just playing Horvath, or I'm not doing it. Starting running back at 3K, that's pretty much all there is to it. Aiden O'Connell, quarterback. He's probably too cheap is what I'll say. He had 30 points against Iowa, and Iowa's a really good defense. But super random. Like, he had 52 pass attempts against Minnesota. Usually this team does like to throw the ball. I think he's going to be in the player pool. Like, I can't strongly recommend him, and there's a chance he might get benched because they like to rotate their quarterbacks with Jack Plummer as well. But the last couple weeks, it seems like O'Connell's kind of won that job, even though he didn't play well last week, so maybe that means he's on the hot seat again. It's, like, stunningly cheap. It's odd. All right, David Bell at 7.1K. Yeah, David Bell, he's always a great player. He's a monster. I don't think he should ever be below 8K. Didn't have a great game last week, and to be honest, he could have had some bigger games this year. He got hit really, really hard against Notre Dame, and he hasn't played all the games this year, but it looks like he's come back and he's healthy. Blew up against Iowa in a game where everyone faded him in DFS, even though he goes off against Iowa every year, and even though he has elite usage. I don't know why everyone faded him. I would assume he's going to be a little more popular now that his price is so cheap, but I could see why. I think he's pretty safe. If you're playing cash, I think David Bell's where you start at wide receiver. All right. Nebraska. It's funny, I just said cash, and now we have Adrian Martinez because he's like the least reliable quarterback ever, but he's kind of a reliable fantasy guy because he runs a lot and he's a very good runner. This matchup against Purdue, like I don't really think Purdue's defense is very good. The total's not super high. But again, I think if a team wins going away, I think it's going to be Nebraska. I'm not saying they're going to, but there could be a pretty good game script. And he almost always runs the ball a lot. At 8.2K, he's in the player pool. It's really hard. Like there's a ton of guys in my player pool for a quarterback this week because there's just a lot more options. And his pricing isn't quite as good as some of those other guys. Like if he's 7.6K, he'd be more owned. 7.2K, I'd have a lot. His pricing's a little more tough, but I think it's warranted because he runs the ball so much. It's like he's like a Walmart Malik Cunningham. It's kind of what he is. Like you want 2 rushing touchdowns, or he probably doesn't have a big day. Don't really play Nebraska wide receivers. I think Samari Torrey's pretty clearly the number 1 guy, but what is that saying when he has 1 catch, 2 catches in his last 3 games? I'll let you figure that one out. Austin Allen's a really good tight end at 4.4K. I'm not sure I could get there. I just think there are some cheaper options that you would want, but he's kind of become the go-to guy in this offense. So maybe I'm discounting him here. Not really a tough matchup against Purdue. Purdue's defense isn't bad, but yeah, maybe I'm discounting him. He's been their go-to guy quietly over the last couple weeks. All right, Ramir Johnson. I really wish he was cheap. I when I first saw the pricing, I went in there and I really wanted Ramir Johnson to be cheap, and he's just not. He's 6.6K. He's still got to be in your player pool. He's been out the last couple of weeks, but he's supposed to come back this week. Every week he has played and been the starter, he has been fantastic. I'm not sure they're going to use him in the passing game, but they should, because against Michigan he blew up and had 6 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown. It looked pretty good. Receiving 2, it looked like he had some skills. He's their alpha in the running back room. Gabe Irvin's out for the year. It's all Ramir Johnson. It's an okay matchup. He is a little banged up, and he is not as cheap as I'd want him to be. So unfortunately, I won't have as much Ramir Johnson as I originally thought. But yeah, this kid's been impressive. Started the year like 5th on the depth chart, and he's been their best back by far. All right, Duke versus Wake. Last game here. Almost forgot about it. I mostly forgot about it in my notes because I didn't even see we had a second page. Monster 14 game slate. Yeah, so this one's the over-under in 70s. Last game on the board, I would assume people are going to be all over this game. Ownership-wise, if you saw anything for Wake's game, so last week was the week to be on Wake. Well, pretty much every week's been the week to be on Wake. They've been a very good DFS team. That Army game was great. The ownership on the Wake guys was so low. Tournament slash. So I had a decent amount of Hartman and Roberson. I had in pretty much every lineup. They both went for over 40 points. Unfortunately, I decided to go full Wake stack in most of those lineups, and I also played Taylor Moore in their wide receiver, who did nothing. Taylor Moron. Sorry, that's mean. He's a kid. Taylor Morin. So unfortunately, that didn't really get me very far. But yeah, so now they're playing Duke, who Duke's another bad defense, and they have a huge implied team total. I think both teams are fine on this. One thing I will say, Duke, if they are able to, they're going to want to slow this game to a crawl and use Mateo Durant a lot. So I think Mateo Durant at 7.7K will be in the player pool. Wake's defense, I just don't think they're very good anywhere. I think they're most vulnerable through the pass, seeing out as Army was just throwing the ball at will. Army was throwing the ball at will on this team. But I don't really think they're good anywhere. And Mateo Durant gets absolutely monster usage at 7.7K. Like, if Duke has their way, they're just going to run him 30 times. Are they going to have their way? I don't know. But, like, if he has 35 carries, I don't see why anyone would be surprised. All right, Gunnar Holmberg, I guess you could put him in the player pool at 6.8K. I wish he was cheaper. I'd have a lot of him. Just because it's such a good matchup with his Wake defense, again, just looks sharp and soft. And the thing is, he runs a little bit. Had 4 rushing touchdowns against Kansas, but that's clearly the outlier. At 6.8K, I think you have better options. But he's okay. Good matchup. If you're stacking this, you could stack this game. If you're making 150 lineups, you should certainly try out some stacks here. All right, wide receiver-wise, I think I'm going to have some Jake Bobo at 5.6K. I do think he is their best wide receiver. I do think he is their go-to. Has tailed off a little bit in recent weeks in favor of Calhoun, but Calhoun's floor seems okay, but his ceiling doesn't seem as high to me as Jake Bobo. Other than that, Marweed, their tight end at 3K. If you really need a 3K guy, he probably shouldn't be 3K. But when I say that, he should probably be, like 3.3, 3.4. It's not much of an edge, but if you really need one that Forbath doesn't play, there you go. All right, Wake. Yeah, Sam Hartman's just been a monster. Very consistent. 9K. Everyone was hopped off him last year because they thought he didn't look good when he was playing Wisconsin's defense, but how many quarterbacks? Who among us, basically? Who among us against Wisconsin's defense? Anyway, I digress. He's fine. 9K, that's really expensive, but good matchup. Over-unders at 70. Sure. Jakari Roberson. He's been too cheap all year long, and I've been loving it. Now he's the most expensive wide receiver on the slate. So 7.6K. That's probably where it should have been priced, to be honest with you. He doesn't quite get the usage he does last year. It's still great usage, but A.T. Perry has more been splitting that usage. Roberson's the alpha. If you're playing one, I'd play Roberson unless you just want leverage. A.T. Perry's been very good this year. He's more of a deep play threat, big body wide receiver, red zone threat. His usage just clearly isn't as consistent as Roberson, so Roberson's probably better in cash. A.T. Perry may be a tournament guy. Morin, like I said, just absolutely crushed me last week. He's at 4.1K. He's really tailed off. He had some hot games. I thought he was going to be trustworthy, and he's fallen off a cliff. Maybe that's where you go back to him because nobody's going to be owning him, but that's just more of a leverage play than anything. Anyone behind him hasn't really seen the field all that much to warrant consideration, in my opinion. Christian Beal-Smith, the running back, is going to be a very, very favorable matchup. He's been losing out, so he's fine. He's pretty cheap at 5.1K. He's been losing touches to Justice Ellison and Christian Turner. So all these guys, it's like a three-way RBBC, so I'm not really sure you can get to either one of those guys, but I mean, Wake could score 70 points again against Duke, and I don't really think anyone would be surprised, so I guess if you really need to punt, Christian Turner and Beal-Smith, I think is fine anywhere. Not a priority play. All right, folks, that wraps up the slate. No prize picks for now. I'll be tweeting them out. Mostly those drop later. It's usually when I hit them, so I usually play those. If I don't get them in early, because sometimes the lines are soft early and then they move. But if I don't get them in early, which I don't have any right now, a lot of them will drop Saturday morning and they don't move because maybe people don't see them, and they're like for the later games, and those have been really good. So check me out on Twitter at YonkerCFB. I'll be sure to get out some prize picks there. Again, that's been like the most profitable thing we've been doing this year. It's been wild. It's been wild on prize picks. Other than that, good luck this week. Thank you for watching. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, review, whatever you're able to. If you have any name suggestions for the show, let me know, because I am absolutely awful with names. Named my son after myself because I can't think of any names to give you an idea. But yeah, just let me know. Hit me up on Twitter, DM me, follow me, follow back. Yeah, enjoy the slate.